just a little slick there between just south of Fargo down towards Sioux Falls. And we've got some rain north of Dallas. Just some light rain mostly, a little bit of heavier rain there, but nothing going gangbusters right now. That is going to change, though, as we head through the rest of this afternoon and certainly over the next couple days. So here's what's going on. We've got the warm air that's been in control for southern portions of the country for quite some time. But what's going to happen is we're going to watch this trough in the west deepen, watch it intensify. That is going to set us up for plenty of moisture being pulled north out of the Gulf of Mexico, still staying pretty warm under that ridge until we get some fronts to move through, until we get that pattern to change. But the problem here is the pattern's not going to be in any hurry to change. So strong upper level winds on Monday, and then by Tuesday we've got that widespread rain and that possibility, pretty good looking possibility for some severe storms. So that's something we're going to have to watch. Here's the thing about this area, though. I know we need the rain. I know we need the rain across many of these places, but when you have such dry ground and you really haven't seen a lot of rain, that makes it a little bit harder for the ground to initially absorb any of that heavy rain, so it becomes runoff, and that creates some flash flooding issues. So certainly concerned about that possibility for some flash flooding across portions of Oklahoma, Missouri, up into Kansas as well. Today, that risk for some stronger storms, maybe a bit of hail, some damaging wind gusts possibly for places like Lubbock, Clovis. You guys are just under a really dynamic setup with the jet kind of invigorating those storms. So you could have some of those storms bubbling up and reaching severe limits. You see some of these cells that we're watching here, especially into the nighttime hours across portions of New Mexico, Roswell. You guys just saw that terrible flooding not that long ago. So probably the last thing that you want to see are heavy rain chances in your forecast, but they are there, so we'll keep an eye on that. Now, tomorrow we're going to ramp up that risk for severe weather just a little bit more. We've got that risk for some very large hail. You could see big hail tomorrow. Damaging wind gusts and a few tornadoes possible from Midland up through Wichita Falls. Got a Torcon here of 2 to 3. Midland, I would keep a very close eye on my forecast tomorrow. And then with that possibility, Chris, we could see golf ball, tennis ball size hail. That's that type of storm chance that you kind of want to plan.
Right now, with snow levels still relatively high.
If you're looking for some sense of normalcy, that's where you want to look.
Exactly.
Because looking at the tropics right now, this is not what I typically would think for November.
Right. I mean, it's still technically hurricane season, but so often it can just be, what do you mean? We're talking snowstorms, and it just doesn't happen.
You start to kind of drop, I don't want to say drop your guard, but it's true. You start to kind of exhale a little bit when you get into November, but we can't do that. So let's talk about what we're watching in the tropics, because now we have an area to watch that has a high chance of development over the next couple days. So you can see our areas to watch that are highlighted here. As Chris mentioned, we still got a month of hurricane season to go. Hurricane season doesn't officially end until the end of November, and we certainly have seen November storms. That is not something that is uncommon at all. But I would say after the season we've had so far, everyone probably is ready to be done with this, right? All right, let's talk about our first area that we're watching. This is very broad, disorganized area of storminess here near the Greater Antilles. It's bringing some heavy rain to the Greater Antilles from Puerto Rico over toward Hispaniola, all the way over toward the southeast Bahamas. So regardless of any type of development from this, it's going to be a rainmaker. It's kind of an envelope of tropical moisture. What the models are hinting at is that that area that we're watching may be more absorbed into this area that we're watching in the Western Caribbean before all is said and done. High chance of development. We could see a tropical depression later this weekend or early next week as it kind of meanders off to the north. Here's what we're seeing, though. We've got several different indicators that we could have ingredients coming together to help get this fueled. So we've got really warm waters here. You can see that. I mean, 80s, 90s, that is just absolute rocket fuel this weekend for that system to develop. Broad area of spin. So we've got that highlighted here for you late this weekend into early next week. That's why we're saying you could see that tropical depression. Not a whole lot of wind shear. So you've got warm water. You don't have a whole lot of wind shear. And those two ingredients coming together, along with plenty of moisture, not a whole lot of dry air either, are all the ingredients that you want to allow a system to progress, to get its act together, which is actually not at all what we want, but that is what you need for those systems to be able to organize. So This is what we're watching, though. Where will this end up? Where will it be steered? Because when you've got this high pressure, that is going to kind of steer it off westerly, northwesterly. But depending on where the high pressure sets up, depending on exactly where this forms, that track is still very uncertain. Now, this is what the European model is hinting at Tuesday through next Friday. You can see the chances of tropical development here around this region in the Western Caribbean. We're getting up into 70, 80% chance of a tropical depression. So that's looking pretty likely. The models are hinting at that. We've talked about this a little bit. We've got about 6% of hurricane season left. That's through the end of November, but those are man-made parameters. We've seen it many years in a row. Now, sometimes you see a storm outside of those actual hurricane season parameters that we've put on that. Sometimes you get a storm before June or after November 30th. So it's something that we're going to keep watching. Chris, I would keep a very close eye on this system if I lived anywhere in the Gulf, because as we've seen, if those storms can get into the Gulf, they can cause some damage.
Yep.
And of course, that was tropically related, but man, it has been a very wet time. I think we're going to be looking at the election forecast. It seems like, let's see if we can get those election forecasts.
But a good reminder.
I mean, that's a good reminder.
Be worse
It could be worse. But for some of us, it's going to be pretty rainy. The good news about your election day is a lot of us, it's just going to be rain. It's not going to be crazy storms, but some are going to be dealing with storms.
Yeah, and you hope that people are still able to get out and go where they need to be. And oftentimes when you look at rain, it's generally not going to be raining all day, or maybe the intensity of it might not be too bad. But I think this is definitely a situation where it could be worse. We could be looking at a tropical system, but that doesn't look like it's the case here.
Yeah, it certainly could be. Do you typically early vote? Or
whenever it's convenient, whenever it fits in.
Yeah. It took me 10 minutes yesterday to go and do early voting. Hopefully, maybe a lot of people will have already early voted, and the lines won't be too long on actual election day. One of the swing states that we have here, Traverse City, Grand Rapids, over into Detroit, there's going to be some rain around.
Here's the afternoon again. This is next Tuesday. Here's noon, lunchtime now into the mid-afternoon. Now here's the evening hours. And yes, still that chance for rain hanging in there. Now, this could just as easily be snow and ice this time of year.
It really could, yeah. I know, I looked at this and I was like, it's going to be windy and rainy in Detroit. And then I looked at the temperatures and I was like, you're probably kind of okay with that, because that could easily, like Chris said, be winter weather.
You can be wearing shorts to the polls
Right,
here.
Exactly, instead of just the wind. Another swing state with the forecast. It's raining here too, Green Bay. But again, this is a cold rain, which I don't know. I think I'd take the snow over the cold rain.
Any day of the week here. But 59, 62 with a little bit of wind, that's going to bite.
Yeah. It says the Floridian. I look at 57 in Green Bay, and I'm like, it's a cold rain.
And I'm thinking it's mild.
I know everyone in Green Bay is like, what's she talking about? This is just fine. Madison, Wisconsin. Now, this is one of the places where it's going to be raining on and off pretty much all day. There will probably be some lighter rain in there, but take the rain jacket.
And then Georgia here, 6 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. Again, not a straight rain everywhere. The temperatures topping out, going from the 60s into the lower 70s by lunchtime, and then into the mid-70s. Not a bad day.
Yeah, not a bad day at all. I mean, it's certainly not feeling very fall-like out there for most of us. And depending on where you live, that is going to determine when your polls open. So just have to plan around that. That's an interesting little tease there. It's this Saturday, so if you want to find out more about that, tune in there.
It's going to be a fun weekend here for sports. 7 o'clock today in the Rose City. Thorns hosting Angel City.
I mean, a bit of rain, but it is what it is. You put on your. Do they play in the rain?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then you put on your poncho.
Playing soccer.
Okay.
Football club. I mean, that's soccer. It's actually what we call soccer here in the States. And here in Orlando, the showers. Temperature is going to be in the 70s. They're hosting the Seattle Rain here in Orlando. This is tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So. It's the showers, I think, what can be tough. If you get the heavy rain, you know about the heavy Florida rain, right? That's going to be a little bit tough.
The good news is normally it moves on in 5 minutes, but still, you don't want to be sitting there soaking wet. I'm a big proponent of ponchos, especially for a forecast that looks like this, especially if there's any wind.
Kind of put them in your pocket, in your little bag or whatever, and you're good to go here. So turning now to the football, right? And Pennsylvania here.
I was like, is it football? Yeah, it is
now
football.
It's American football, and we're looking at some sunshine here.
That's not a bad football forecast there in University Park. And that's not the only place that we have to watch for the risk of fire. I mean, when you're talking about this kind of drought, you're just hoping for a little rain, but you're also ramping up that fire risk.
And this time of year, usually the storm track would be such that we would have some systems to come through to bring us some rain, but the red and the really, really dark red, those are the higher categories of drought. Extreme and even exceptional, which is the highest form of drought.
Yeah, that's right. So for today, we have elevated fire potential from Bridgeport down through Allentown, Philly. You guys have really not had I mean, Philly, it's been a really long time since you guys have had rain. You're on that streak. So it's no wonder that you're seeing that elevated.
More than a month without rain.
It's been very, very dry.
And with that, fire danger, red flag warnings here from the parts of West Virginia, Maryland, all the way up through New England.
The winds are gusty, guys. The fuel is out there. So any fires that get started are going to spread really quickly. That's a fantastic use of a poncho.
It is. You know, I'm Chris Warren with Felicia Combs here, and this reminds me years and years ago when the first movie came out. I saw this person, I'll tell you what movie in a second.
Okay.
Their hair, this guy's hair was whacked out like that. His tie was over his neck, and he had McDonald's wrappers and leaves and stuff attached to him. I was like, dude, what are you?
Right.
He's like, I'm an extra in Twister. And it was the year the first one came out.
Oh,
I thought it was fantastic.
That's a good
Isn't
one.
it?
And then it's clean up. You know, you just take the poncho off. You don't have to worry about scrubbing off a bunch of makeup. I don't know. I might have my windy day costume for we both experienced that though in person. A really windy day. That was such a fantastic costume. Some of us, though, are going to be dealing with windy, rainy days in the coming. The last couple days, we're going to warm right back up. I know everyone's like, where in the world is fall? And we've gotten a little sprinkle of it, but not a whole lot. And now we're watching that risk for some flooding rains, possibly. So our dip in the jet stream allowing some cooler air to dive south, but it is also intensifying that influx of moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico across the southern plains, the central U.S., all the way up through the Great Lakes. We've got a steady feed of moisture. Also with the setup that we have, we've got really strong upper level winds. That is going to help to get the system going, to allow those storms to strengthen. So certainly some severe storms are possible as we head through the next couple days, especially over that area that we've highlighted across the plains states. Rounds of showers and thunderstorms are going to add up, and that's going to leave us with that risk for some flash flooding. Now, you may look at this and you might be like, hey, I'm sitting right here. I'm in Oklahoma City and we need some rain. It is pretty dry. But when you talk about very heavy rain coming down on that very dry ground, sometimes it's hard for that dry ground to absorb the water efficiently when it's coming down at a really good clip. So that can lead to some flooding issues. Let's time it out for you. We're looking at your overnight tonight into very early Saturday. You start to see some of those showers developing across Texas up through Oklahoma, Kansas getting in on that. And it's sticking around. You'll notice that this system is in no hurry to scoot off to the east. It's going to be in for a little while. So some of these areas are going to be stuck in the rain for days, Chris. It's like we get kind of one round after another of that influx of rain and showers moving in. And then even a little bit of snow. So the Rockies have gotten in on some of that snow. We're just not seeing a whole lot of cold air out there. And we do have that risk for some severe storms for tonight. So that's something to watch. It's going to be large hail. It's going to be damaging winds, maybe a few tornadoes as well. So staying in that really active pattern as you might expect in a transitional season as is fall.
Yeah, as that jet stream drops down, we tend to see those upticks in severe weather, while at the same time as that jet stream
The end of Halloween, we know we're heading into November, the end of the parameters that we've put on hurricane season at the end of the month, but man, it's been active so far.
It has. So far, named storms 15. 10 of those were hurricanes and 4 major hurricanes.
Those are some crazy numbers when you think about it, especially when you think about how many actually made landfall. Now, there for a second, you know, the forecast was for, oh, this is going to be a crazy hurricane season. And then when we were hitting kind of what should be the peak and it was below average, people were like, what's going on? But man, have we made that up.
Jump. So this is essentially like the energy. You can think of it that way. It's the, you know, the overall energy. I mean, a lot of, you know, really complicated math that goes into this. But bottom line, you know, the more the busier generally, or the bigger storms. You can have a few that are really big. They can produce a lot of energy, but this boom, that uptick there, end of September and October.
Man, it really just jumped up there really quickly. You can see, now when you put it on a map like this and you see how many threats we've watched in the Gulf of Mexico, how many times we've had to hold our breath about where these storms were going, and then you see names like Milton and Helene, it just really underscores how much we've been through this season.
And so many landfalls as well here. And you can see Francine going across the Yucatan, and then hitting into Texas.
Such a busy season in terms of those. I mean, just look at this. This is when we're talking about living in the Gulf and having storm fatigue. This is exactly what we're talking about. Started with Beryl with that landfall all the way through Helene, Debbie, Milton.
Category 3 Milton making landfall there, and Helene Category 4.
That is just, you know, having multiple storms make landfall in your state or near you is bad enough, but make them major hurricanes, and that just ups that level. That's even worse.
And we've seen all of the destruction and all of the damage here. Where there are actual measuring sites for storm surge, there were some new records, as you can see here, and considerably higher, right? Coupled to a few feet from the previous record.
Not by just a little. And then when you think about getting that flooding from Helene, when Helene was so far away, and then Milton right after that for much of the west coast of Florida, just such an exhausting time the past, 2 months have been.
And then in October, first time on record with 3 simultaneous hurricanes in the month of October. And you see right there, we had Milton at the time, and then Kirk and Leslie.
Man, it is that is really ramping up that accumulated cyclone energy that we showed you at the beginning of this. Having 3 at one time will spike that number very quickly.
So as we're seeing here, October absolutely you can have for hurricanes, and we saw a lot. And November, we also can, in the past, see a lot of activity. Here's Jen Carfagna with that story.
You're rolling on through 2024. It is officially November. Maybe you're still recovering from your candy intake of yesterday, or still intaking it.
People are dragging today.
Candy everywhere. I'm dragging a little bit, I'll be honest. Meteorologist Felicia Combs, meteorologist Chris Warren. I can still get you the forecast just fine, but man, it is not feeling very November-like for a lot of us.
No, it is not, but it's looking like it for some. With the kind of rain that we've been seeing and the kind of rain that is expected here in the coming days, a bit of a soaker for some.
Yeah, take a look at this, because this is what... All right, let's take a look at where we've got some action going on currently, because some of us are getting a little bit of rain, maybe a little bit of wintry weather as well. That 94 corridor and some of that snow currently there between Bismarck and Fargo. Temperatures are still just a little bit on the warm side there, so not sure how much actual accumulation we're going to get out of that. A bit of snow rain mix if you're heading south out of Fargo towards Sioux Falls. Looking farther south, we've got a smattering of showers across Texas, whether you're looking at North Texas there near the Red River Valley, and then some rain filling in across Louisiana up into southern Mississippi. Now, we are going to have much more to watch in terms of active weather once we get some of these severe storms bubbling up over the next several days. So looking at your Saturday, we're watching that jet stream dip to the west, and then, of course, that ridge across the east. That's what we've been seeing. It's going to be warm. Hope you enjoyed your brief taste of fall, because those warm temperatures are coming right back, along with plentiful moisture being steered northward as well. We're going to watch as we get this system to develop early next week. Those upper level winds are going to be cranking with this setup that we have. That is going to help to lift that moisture northward, and that is going to help those storms to develop, to breathe, and to keep going, which means we could see some storms reaching severe limits in this area that we have circled here, highlighted from Kansas City down through Dallas, portions of the hill country of Texas getting in on that as well. Heavy rain, though, on areas where the ground is very dry. That could lead to some flash flooding. Now, eventually the ground will start to soak that up, but in the meantime, we have to watch very closely for some flash flooding issues. Now, let's go back to tonight. I know we were looking ahead to next week with that flash flooding issue, but tonight, that possibility for Amarillo, Lubbock, Carlsbad, all of those areas have that risk for some of these storms to get a little bit on the feistier side as we head through the nighttime hours. Now, of course, when you look at this, places like Roswell, where you just had such terrible flooding not that long ago, the last thing you want to see is more very heavy rain falling for hours during the overnight. So we're going to watch that very closely. Some of those storms could also have some hail with them, some damaging winds. And then looking ahead to tomorrow, for Saturday, for your weekend, you're going to have to plan around this possibility for large hail, for damaging winds, and an isolated tornado risk. Midland up through Wichita Falls. We've got Torcons up 2 to 3. Midland, you can see you're kind of in that 3 area highlighted here, but even the 2 stretching up into OKC, that is not a 0 risk. That means you do have a risk for an isolated tornado, so it's something to watch. Now, let's talk about that hail, because when you're talking about, especially here where we have this little hatched section, that risk risk for golf ball to tennis ball size hail. If you have the option to park the car in a garage, I would be doing that, Chris, because when you're talking about a golf ball size hailstone flying down out of the sky, that could do some damage for sure.
It absolutely, but some other areas is absolutely dry in the country. It tends to be the haves and the have-nots when it comes to precipitation.
It's like the extremes of one or the other, like you said, the haves or the have-nots. Now, where we have seen quite a bit of precipitation has been in some of the places where we've had tropical activity, and we are not done with hurricane season yet. November 1st marks the last month, or the last official month of hurricane season, but as we know, Mother Nature can make her own parameters on what she wants to do outside of those human-made parameters of June through November. So a couple different areas to watch. You see them highlighted here. We're going to go near the Greater Antilles, and this one in the Western Caribbean, because it's something that really warrants keeping a very close eye on. So here's that first area. Low chance of development on this, just quite a bit of thunderstorm activity hanging out near the Greater Antilles. Going to be a rainmaker regardless through Hispaniola, up through the southeastern portions of the Bahamas over toward Cuba. So going to bring some rain. What is expected to happen, though, is as we look at this area in the Western Caribbean with a high chance of development, what we're expecting to happen is it will kind of absorb the energy of that other area that we were just looking at as it kind of meanders northward. We could have a tropical depression by later this weekend, early next week, and it has plentiful warm water, plenty of fuel to work with. So a couple of the ingredients that you need to get a storm together, to get it organized, to watch it develop. You need those warm ocean waters. That is exactly what we have in the Caribbean. You need a favorable environment in terms of not a lot of wind shear. We're going to have that, as well as this broad area of spin is developing early next week there in the Western Caribbean. Not a whole lot to inhibit the development. And then also we're going to throw in that extra ingredient of moisture, not a ton of dry air. So all of that can come together to help the system get its act together. Now, this is not what we want to see, because of course, the models can't really latch on to what they want to do with this area of low pressure until it gets more of a center of circulation. And the thing that you need to know about this is the models aren't sure what they want to do. They don't know where they want to take it just yet. So this is something that you want to keep watching as we head through the next several days and into next week, especially if you have interest there in the Gulf Coast region. Chris?
Yeah, we'll call that
predictions, keeping it very warm as well. So for all the snow lovers out there, you're probably at this point kind of like, come on, like if you're in like Chicago or something, like we need some cold air.
Where is it?
You're right, exactly. Now, we will be getting rain if you've been asking about that on Election Day. So let's break it down for you a little bit. You can see that rain starting out in the middle portions of the country, very, very slowly pushing eastward. It's not moving a whole lot on Tuesday.
Right, so heading to the polls, it could be a little wet, but again, Felicia, could be worse.
Definitely.
Temperatures are going to be relatively mild. Not expecting snow in any of the big cities here, and not super cold either.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at some of the swing states here that all eyes are focused on, one of those, Michigan, you're going to have Traverse City, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo starting off your morning in the rain. And then it rains for a few hours, but it's not looking like, crazy gangbusters rain, and, could be light, which isn't terrible.
No, so yeah, 46 in the Upper Peninsula. I mean, this time of year, you might call that balmy, right?
I mean,
For
63 in Traverse City.
Now you're warm, 73 in Detroit.
Yeah.
A little bit of rain to deal with.
It is not. That is not November like. Typically, like we said last time, that could be ice this time of year very easily.
Easily. But in this case, some wind, but temperatures are going to be in the lower 70s. Might have some leaves falling off the trees, whatever leaves you have left here. But temperatures going to start off in the 40s in some areas here on Tuesday, with 50s in the eastern part of the state, but by the afternoon, you're going to be back up into the 60s.
By Wisconsin standards for November, for Election Day, that's not bad at all. So while there will be rain, I mean, I went to vote yesterday. It took me 10 minutes. Hopefully, most people have early voted, and then by Election Day, you won't really have to worry about the lines that much.
You don't have to worry about the weather. Go when it's convenient. Go when it helps you here. And Madison also looking generally for dry, or for light rain, I should say, and then showers tend to be more hit and miss, kind of like you don't stay in the shower all day. Showers don't last all day. They come and they go.
Thankfully, because you would be a super raisin if you were in the shower all day. Heading to Georgia, temperatures staying very mild and a little bit of rain in the forecast. That's an interesting little tease there. That's this Saturday, so if you want to find out more about that, tune in there.
It's going to be a fun weekend here for sports. 7 o'clock today in the Rose City. Thorns hosting Angel City.
I mean, a bit of rain, but you know, it is what it is. You put on your. Do they play in the rain?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then you put on your poncho.
Playing soccer.
Okay. You.
Football club. I mean, that's soccer. It's called. It's actually what we call soccer here in the States. And here in Orlando, the showers. Temperature's going to be in the 70s. They're hosting the Seattle Rain here in Orlando. This is tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So. It's the showers, I think, what can be tough. If you get the heavy rain, you know about the heavy Florida rain, right? That's going to be a little bit tough.
The good news is normally it moves on in 5 minutes, but still, you don't want to be sitting there soaking wet. I'm a big proponent of ponchos, especially for a forecast that looks like this, especially if there's any wind.
Kind of put them in your pocket, in your little bag or whatever, and you're good to go here. So turning now to the football, right? And Pennsylvania here.
I was like, is it football? Yeah, it is
now
football.
It's American football, and we're looking at some sunshine here.
That's not a bad football forecast there in University Park. And that's not the only place that we have to watch for the risk of fire. I mean, when you're talking about this kind of drought, you're just hoping for a little rain, but you're also ramping up that fire risk.
And this time of year, usually the storm track would be such that we would have some systems to come through to bring us some rain, but the red and the really, really dark red, those are the higher categories of drought. Extreme and even exceptional, which is the highest form of drought.
Yeah, that's right. So for today, we have elevated fire potential from Bridgeport down through Allentown, Philly. You guys have really not had I mean, Philly, it's been a really long time since you guys have had rain. You're on that streak. So it's no wonder that you're seeing that
elevated. More than a month without rain.
It's been very, very dry.
And with that, fire danger, red flag warnings here from the parts of West Virginia, Maryland, all the way up through New England.
The winds are gusty, guys. The fuel is out there, so any fires that get started are going to spread really quickly.
Nice, windy day. I like the name.
I think both of us have been there before where we were holding that Weather Channel microphone and we were talking about a windy day.
I think that was her name, Windy Day.
Yeah.
Was it? She said, this is windy day, or she said, this is a windy day.
I think that was her name.
That's what I think. Yeah. I like that.
I like it too.
My twirl isn't nearly as good as her twirl.
Let's see it. No, let's see the judge of that. Thanks for sticking with us. Neither one of us are Windy Day.
No.
Felicia Combs, Chris Warren. Man, so I love to see the creativity. I love Halloween.
So also, the kids have a vocabulary parade, so they all dress up with their word.
Okay.
And there's some really good ones. But I saw one kind of like that. There's a meteorologist cruising around.
They do it just for Halloween?
Yeah, that's their Halloween is a vocabulary. So they get a word, and to see some of the students with some of these pretty impressive words too. It's not like cat, right? It could be like apprehensive or something, like some big words for 4th and 5th graders.
That is a big word. Well, we're going to break down some big weather words because there's a lot to talk about coming up in the next couple of days. You know, you want good weather when you're talking about Election Day and all of that, and this could happen, the risk of flooding with this system that we're about to talk about, that risk for severe storms. And then as Chris mentioned, there is a system in the tropics that we're watching very closely, and we'll be watching it for a little while to see what it's going to end up doing. Now, with this particular area of storminess that's going to end up developing into early next week. Plenty of moisture being lifted north underneath that ridge ahead of that that just really vigorous dip in the jet stream. You've got that trough and you've got just a ton of upper level support with these winds. That's going to help those storms develop. It's going to help them breathe and keep them alive and help them to reach severe limits. Now in this highlighted area that you see, the circle that we have here for Texas, Oklahoma, up through even southwestern portions of Iowa, some severe storms are possible. That area will be kind of redefined and honed in on as we have a better look at what the system's going to do. But do know some of those storms could get feisty and we could see some flash flooding. That's one of the risks. Now, much of this area that you see highlighted in the yellow and the orange, which is 3 to 5 inches of rain or even higher amounts, this area is in drought, so you really could use some of this rain, but when you get it very quickly and very heavy, that could lead to some flash flooding early next week. So that's something we have to watch closely. Watch as the rain begins to build, and you can kind of see that onslaught of moisture moving through portions of the Four Corners region and then eventually up through Texas and the plains. That rain fills in, and then it doesn't move a whole lot. It kind of stays over the same places, and that allows us to get those higher rainfall totals. So that's something we're going to be watching heading into next week. And you know, Chris, this is going to be one of those things where you have to watch it very closely. Quick look at this tonight. We've got that risk for some severe storms, places like Roswell and Lubbock. It's kind of been a tale of as you said earlier, haves or have-nots in terms of the rain. Like a place like Roswell, it was so dry, and they got all that rain, and it caused all the issues. So it's like, could we just get like a nice medium? You know?
Right.
Never happens though.
No, it doesn't. But you know what? So from weather that can be destructive to another part of the country where weather.
Well, with the end of Halloween, we know we're heading into November, the end of the parameters that we've put on hurricane season at the end of the month. But man, it's been active so far.
It has. So far, named storms 15. 10 of those were hurricanes and 4 major hurricanes.
Those are some crazy numbers when you think about it, especially when you think about how many actually made landfall. Now, there for a second, you know, the forecast was for, oh, this is going to be a crazy hurricane season. And then when we were hitting kind of what should be the peak and it was below average, people were like, what's going on? But man, have we made that up.
Jump. So this is essentially like the energy. You can think of it that way. It's the, you know, the overall energy. I mean, a lot of, you know, really complicated math that goes into this. But bottom line, you know, the more the busier generally, or the bigger storms. You can have a few that are really big. They can produce a lot of energy, but this boom, that uptick there, end of September into October.
Man, it really just jumped up there really quickly. You can see, now when you put it on a map like this and you see how many threats we've watched in the Gulf of Mexico, how many times we've had to hold our breath about where these storms were going, and then you see names like Milton and Helene, it just really underscores how much we've been through this season.
And so many landfalls as well here. And you can see Francine going across the Yucatan and then hitting into Texas.
Such a busy season in terms of those. I mean, just look at this. This is when we're talking about living in the Gulf and having storm fatigue. This is exactly what we're talking about. Started with Beryl with that landfall all the way through Helene, Debbie, Milton.
Category 3 Milton making landfall there, and Helene Category 4.
That is just, you know, having multiple storms make landfall in your state or near you is bad enough, but make them major hurricanes, and that just ups that level that's even worse.
And we've seen all of the destruction and all of the damage here. Where there are actual measuring sites for storm surge, there were some new records, as you can see here, and considerably higher, right? Coupled to a few feet from the previous record.
Not by just a little. And then when you think about getting that flooding from Helene, when Helene was so far away, and then Milton right after that for much of the west coast of Florida, just such an exhausting time the past, 2 months have been.
And then in October, first time on record with 3 simultaneous hurricanes in the month of October. And you see right there, we had Milton at the time, and then Kirk and Leslie.
Man, it is that is really ramping up that accumulated cyclone energy that we showed you at the beginning of this. Having 3 at one time will spike that number very quickly.
So as we're seeing here, October acts absolutely you can have for hurricanes, and we saw a lot. And November, we also can, in the past, see a lot of activity. Here's Jen Carfagna with that story.
All right, rolling right into November. Happy November, everyone. We have 2 months left of 2024. Can you believe it?
Can't believe it. And it's November already.
We're just zooming on through. Thanks for sticking with us here on Weather Channel Live. Meteorologist Felicia Combs, along with meteorologist Chris Warren. And Chris, you know, a lot of people were out, maybe up a little late last night with the trick-or-treaters, celebrating Halloween, whatever you might be doing, but we're so close to the weekend.
So close. I think a lot of people got an early start to the weekend yesterday. Definitely the kids, right?
Raise his hand. Yeah, no. Now, some of us were dodging a little bit of rain. Some of us had shots that were having any indication of exactly what's going to happen, but we're going to get to that in just a sec. First, let's talk about where we've got some active weather right now along the I-94 corridor. We had a terrible day in Minnesota yesterday with some of that snow that we saw with car accidents and things like that. So 94, maybe just a little slick in some places, but that snow is starting to taper off now. Fargo right now, you've got a cold rain. Nothing says this is miserable like a cold rain, right? We've got some showers elsewhere as well. We've got some of that rain, that moisture moving in from the Gulf of Mexico, Louisiana, up through southern Mississippi, and a couple pockets of showers there across Texas. A better chance for some storminess for western portions of Texas, eastern portions of New Mexico. Later on, we're going to get to that in a second. But first, let's talk about this system that we're watching. We have a big dip in the jet stream on the west, a ridge in the east that has been kind of a similar setup that we've had with the heat. But now we're reintroducing more rain, a very wet pattern that we're going to be in over the weekend into early next week. And then also a potent storm system that we have to watch, that possibility for some severe storms here. You see that highlighted in this circled area. And then even outside of the severe possibilities, rounds of rain and thunderstorms. And so much rain, in fact, that could lead to some flash flooding issues issues. This is through Tuesday. Springfield, Missouri, down through OKC, looking at you with that possibility for some of that flash flooding becoming a problem. Now, as mentioned, that risk for some severe storms across western portions of Texas, eastern portions of New Mexico, Roswell, Clovis, Lubbock included in that. Looking at that risk for some hail, for some damaging wind gusts as well. And then as we've seen recently, especially with this topography like you have across portions of New Mexico, maybe a little bit of flash flooding, you're going to have heavy rain kind of hanging around some of the same areas for a couple hours. So I would not be surprised to see some flood alerts coming out of this as well. Into tomorrow, we continue with that risk for severe storms. Midland up through Wichita Falls. You've got that risk for tornadoes, a few tornadoes, or an isolated tornado. You know, 2 to 3 on our scale is not a huge number, but it is still there. Midland, I'd pay close attention to that. But also that threat for large hail. I mean, where you see this kind of hatched area, we're talking golf ball, tennis ball size hail. That's going to do some damage. You don't want to be stuck out in that. But any of the storms that reach severe limits, that's not something you want to be hanging around in. So let's look at your Saturday. Just look at all of this moisture, just this kind of pulse of energy that we're watching that's going to be hanging out around this region, bringing us a ton of rain. I really do think we're going to have to watch for that possibility of some of that rain beginning to add up. We're sticking with rain throughout the day in Amarillo and down through Lubbock. You can see the model predicting some of these stronger storms. And then we're going to watch as that kind of forms into more of a bit of a lined segment from OKC down through Wichita Falls, knocking on your door in Abilene, although it might stay just to the north of you. And then you can watch as that ushers its way off to the east. Wichita Falls, you're in it as well. And then again on Sunday, we've got that risk. Texas, you just can't completely get out of this risk area, but we're going to stretch it a little bit farther north. Hayes, you're in this. Wichita, you're in this as well on Sunday. And you can see we're kicking off the morning with some storms, but then watch what happens as we head through the day. We'll watch this other influx of moisture and storminess build its way back in. So, you know, for a lot of these places, Chris, we're going from what has been a really calm pattern to a much more active pattern. And that is exactly what we've been seeing in the West for weeks now.
Yeah, in fact, let's go ahead and take a look at, do that on purpose because it does sound odd.
I know, I was like, oh, wait, what are we talking about?
They're not active volcanoes.
Right. But they are volcanoes. I had to zone back in for a second.
What's this guy talking about?
I know, I heard volcanoes and I was like,
Mount St. Helens blew in 1980.
I mean,
so they're active, they're just dormant.
Yeah.
I mean, so they could come alive.
Let's not wake them up.
That.
Yeah,
no,
let's not wake them up. All right, the tropics are still alive. The tropics are still very much alive. And, you know, with a month left in hurricane season, we do expect that, but we are watching something very interesting in the Western Caribbean. So a couple different areas to watch. Here's the first one I'm going to talk to you about. This is this disturbance, this kind of messiness that you're seeing here near the Greater Antilles. Then we're going to move over to this area that we're watching in the Western Caribbean. And then, of course, you can see a couple different areas of interest in the eastern or the West Pac. So let's talk about this. 10% chance of development on this system near the Greater Antilles. So not a huge chance of development, but what we do expect to happen with this is it's going to be a rainmaker. It's like an envelope of tropical moisture. It's going to be impacting Hispaniola, the southeastern Bahamas, and then even I'd say eastern portions of Cuba with some heavier rain. Now, eventually that energy is going to get absorbed by this. That's what we're watching here. A high chance of development eventually when we start to see this get some circulation to it. So anywhere in this hatched area in the Western Caribbean is where we could see some development, maybe a tropical depression or this weekend or early next week. It's got all the ingredients that you need. One ingredient that you need is warm water, and we certainly have that. I'd call that hot water because 90-degree temperatures in some places this weekend there across the Western Caribbean. We'll also start to see that kind of broad area of circulation. You see it here pointed out. That's what the models are indicating. And it doesn't have anything to kind of tear it apart. The shear is what could inhibit some of the development on this, but there's also limited wind shear. So let's count it out. We've got the fuel with the warm water. We've got limited shear, which means it's a favorable environment. Now we're going to throw in a dash of moisture as well, and all of that's going to come together for the possibility of this system developing. Now, here's what we want to watch. Now, it's slowly organizing. It's very hard for the models to pinpoint what they want to do with the system when the circulation hasn't developed just yet. We do know there's going to be a high pressure in place, and that is going to help to move it westward. Now, where it goes beyond that is still a big question, and that's why you want to pay such close attention to this. The track of this system is so uncertain, but we know it so well. I mean, once something gets in the Gulf, It's got to make landfall, and a majority of those landfalls, or a lot of those landfalls, end up happening there in the northern Gulf Coast or on the Gulf Coast of Florida. Now, the models, as mentioned, are still not in agreement where they want to take it, but it does warrant watching, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing. The European chance of tropical depression through next Friday, Tuesday through next Friday, is pretty high. If I had to bet on something and there was an 80% chance of it happening, I'd probably bet on it happening, Chris, with this tropical depression formation, especially with all the ingredients that we're seeing.
Yeah, that's a good shifted over a little
right,
bit.
just over just a little bit. But man, it's been so dry there. It's not going to be dry for Election Day for some of us, and that could be, I would say, when you are driven to get out and vote and you want to vote on Election Day, you're not going to let a little rain stop you.
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, and a little rain, especially when you're looking at temperatures like this. I mean, 64 in Kalamazoo, 61 in Traverse City. That's your morning temperature with the rain hanging around. It has been for previous election days and could be so much worse.
And just if we do have some storms, just be aware of that. But absolutely, it could be worse. It could be blizzard. We could have snow. We could have wind. We could have stronger storms. Yeah. It's not bad.
No, it's not. It's nothing that a little rain jacket will not help. Of course, now what time the polls open and what time they close is based on where you live, so you have to time it out for yourself. I think a lot of people have been early voting, so maybe you won't even have crazy lines on Election Day, hopefully.
I mean, it really should not be a big hindrance when it comes to getting out and really, and frankly, doing just about anything. If you've lived through a winter in Wisconsin, I think you're going to handle next Tuesday weather-wise. Yeah,
I think you'll be okay in 52 and a little bit of rain for your Election Day. Now, another swing state that we're watching, Georgia, you're going to have a little bit of rain around, but again, it's nothing crazy. I think a lot of North Georgia would actually probably be kind of happy to see a little bit of rain at this point.
There's still a lot of dry spots across parts of the South, mainly at the surface. We've had, quite a bit of rain over the summer, so you get down into the soil. It's not as dry, but the rain hasn't come down a lot lately.
It has been a very dry time. Temperatures staying very comfortable when you're looking at those type of temperatures. Now up to the Carolinas. Now you'll see rain is in the forecast. It was such a long dry streak around Asheville. Of course, they've had some of their own kind of, and I don't want to call them issues, but you have to figure out what you're going to do with the polling places that were destroyed or changed. So you might want to check and make sure you know where you go to vote before you head out.
And so that's a little bit of green. It's not a ton of green, even close to 80 degrees in parts of the Piedmont, getting down into coastal North Carolina.
So comfortable, not a whole lot to get in your way in terms of getting out there and voting. Now, I will say, you just want to, if it is going to be raining and you might be standing in line, you do want to prepare for that. Maybe a poncho isn't a bad idea. You will have rain sticking around for the entire period that we're showing you here Tuesday in Asheville.
All right, and then Charlotte, mainly looking dry.
That's an interesting little tease there. That's this Saturday, so if you want to find out more about that, tune in there.
It's going to be a fun weekend here for sports. 7 o'clock today in the Rose City. Thorns hosting Angel City.
I mean, a bit of rain, but, it is what it is. You put on your... Do they play in the rain?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Okay, well, then you put on your poncho.
Playing soccer.
Okay.
Football club. I mean, that's, soccer. It's actually what we call soccer here in the States. And here in Orlando, the showers, temperature's going to be in the 70s. They're hosting the Seattle Rain here in Orlando. This is tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So, it's the showers, I think, what can be tough. If you get the heavy rain, you know about the heavy Florida rain, right? That's going to be a little bit tough.
Now, the good news is normally it moves on in 5 minutes, but still, you don't want to be sitting there soaking wet. I'm a big proponent of ponchos, especially for a forecast that looks like this, especially if there's any wind.
Kind of put them in your pocket, in your little bag or whatever, and you're good to go here. So turning now to the football, right? And Pennsylvania here.
I was like, is it football? Yeah, it is
now
football.
It's American football. And we're looking at some sunshine here.
That's not a bad football forecast there in University Park. And that's not the only place that we have to watch for the risk of fire. I mean, when you're talking about this kind of drought, you're just hoping for a little rain, but you're also ramping up that fire risk.
And this time of year, usually the storm track would be such that we would have some systems to come through to bring us some rain, but The red and the really, really dark red, those are the higher categories of drought. Extreme and even exceptional, which is the highest form of drought.
Yeah, that's right. So for today, we have elevated fire potential from Bridgeport down through Allentown, Philly. You guys have really not had, I mean, Philly, it's been a really long time since you guys have had rain. You're on that streak. So it's no wonder that you're seeing that
more
elevated
than a month without rain.
It's been very, very dry.
And with that, fire danger, red flag warnings here from the parts of West Virginia, Maryland, all the way up through New England.
The winds are gusty, guys. The fuel is out there. So any fires that get started are going to spread really quickly. Love the creativity. Yeah, I love the poncho. I love the, did you notice the microphone? That looked official.
The whole thing looked pretty dialed in. Although haven't been able to master the poncho in the field yet.
Yeah, the poncho for what we're doing in the field is typically.
But for her purposes,
perfect.
Spot on.
10 out of 10.
Absolutely. And right there, absolutely crushing it. Doing a great job.
I give that one a 10 out of 10 for sure. Now, we're going to need our poncho in the coming days because it's going to be raining in some places for days.
Or just cruise around with the umbrella, kind of like this.
Right.
You know, just kind of have it ready to roll.
The thing about an umbrella is if there's any wind at all, it's like, well, this isn't doing anything.
True.
Yeah, but a poncho on a windy day.
You've been advocating the poncho today pretty hard.
I have been a poncho advocate for years. You could go back because how many times are you like walking in, the wind is blowing, and you're like, well, this umbrella did nothing.
That rain's getting underneath the umbrella.
Oh yeah, the umbrella's doing nothing.
Yeah,
but the poncho's
dialed
got you.
in.
Are you going to feel like steamed broccoli? Probably, if it's warm outside at all, but you're going to stay dry. All right, let's take a look at where together the moisture, the upper level pattern to bring us that risk for some stronger storms. So they're also going to help those storms reach severe limits if they can get going. So this highlighted region that you see, Kansas City, OKC, down through Dallas, you've got that risk for some of those storms being severe as we head through Tuesday. So a large area where the atmosphere could get a little bit feisty. Not just that, but that risk for flash flooding. Concerned about this because, you know, where you're seeing this orange, you can see on our legend here, that's 5 inches of rain or more in just a couple days. And with the ground being as dry as it is there, sometimes it's hard for the ground to actually soak up that rain that we're getting, and sometimes that creates some flash flooding issues when it initially starts raining. So here's your Saturday morning. We'll start to see that rain building through Kansas, Nebraska, all the way down into Texas, the Red River Valley of the South getting in on that rain. Sunday, we've still got those showers and storms sticking around throughout the day into the afternoon. And what you'll notice as you're watching this, now we're heading through Monday, the system is not moving a whole lot. It might be expanding a bit, but a lot of the same areas that have been getting rain will continue to get rain. Also want to alert you here, be on the lookout for that risk of severe storms across western portions of Texas, eastern portions of New Mexico, and that risk for some flash flooding. You know, you don't like to see this on the map. Chris Roswell just had all that terrible flooding, but with the rain that we have in the forecast tonight and into tomorrow, certainly flash flooding could become an issue. Well, with the end of Halloween, we know we're heading into November, the end of the parameters that we've put on hurricane season at the end of the month. But man, it's been active so far.
It has. So far, named storms 15. 10 of those were hurricanes and 4 major hurricanes.
Those are some crazy numbers when you think about it, especially when you think about how many actually made landfall. Now, there for a second, you know, the forecast was for, oh, this is going to be a crazy hurricane season. And then when we were hitting kind of what should be the peak and it was below average, people were like, what's going on? But man, have we made that up.
Jump. So this is essentially like the energy. You can think of it that way. It's the, you know, the overall energy. I mean, a lot of, you know, really complicated math that goes into this. But bottom line, you know, the more the busier generally, or the bigger storms. You can have a few that are really big. They can produce a lot of energy, but this boom, that uptick there, end of September and October.
Man, it really just jumped up there really quickly. You can see, you know, when you put it on a map like this and you see how many threats we've watched in the Gulf of Mexico, how many times we've had to hold our breath about where these storms were going, and then you see names like Milton and Helene, it just really underscores how much we've been through this season.
And so many landfalls as well here. And you can see Francine going across the Yucatan and then hitting into Texas.
Such a busy season in terms of those. I mean, just look at this. This is when we're talking about living in the Gulf and having storm fatigue. This is exactly what we're talking about. Started with Beryl with that landfall all the way through Helene, Debbie, Milton.
Category 3 Milton making landfall at landfall there, and Helene Category 4.
That is just, having multiple storms make landfall in your state or near you is bad enough, but make them major hurricanes, and that just ups that level. That's even worse.
And we've seen all of the destruction and all of the damage here. Where there are actual measuring sites for storm surge, there were some new records, as you can see here, and considerably higher, right? Coupled to a few feet from the previous record.
Not by just a little. And then when you think about getting that flooding from Helene, when Helene was so far away, and then Milton right after that for much of the west coast of Florida, just such an exhausting time the past, 2 months have been.
And then in October, first time on record with 3 simultaneous hurricanes in the month of October. And you see right there, we had Milton at the time, and then Kirk and Leslie.
Man, it is that is really ramping up that accumulated cyclone energy that we showed you at the beginning of this. Having 3 at one time will spike that number very quickly.
So as we're seeing here, October acts absolutely you can have for hurricanes, and we saw a lot. And November, we also can, in the past, see a lot of activity. Here's Jen Carfagna with that story.
We'll come out to, talking about our next system, but it was like Eta or Zeta or one of those storms. We had that, and we were talking about that for the northern Gulf Coast, and it was like late October and November, and then an ice storm in months are always interesting.
I remember one year blizzard.
Right, exactly. Yeah. 'Tis that time of year, and with that said, we've got all of that to talk to you about because, man, November is starting off with quite a bit. So let's take a look at where we've got some active weather right now. I've watched as this snow has lifted north of that 94 corridor. Fargo, still just a little bit of rain for you if you were taking 94 down toward Minneapolis. Might be a little wet on some of the roadways there. We've got some rain that's been hanging around. I'm actually kind of surprised that we're not seeing any issues coming out of this just yet. This pocket of rain has been kind of hanging out over the same spot over Louisiana for a little bit of time here. And we've got some showers dotting the map across Texas as well. Let's break down our next system that we're going to be watching, and then we'll talk a little bit more about those severe weather risks that we have later on today. So this next system we're watching into the weekend, a dip in the jet stream, that is going to bring us the ingredients that we need for that severe weather. The east side of that trough, or that dip in the jet stream, just going to funnel that moisture northward across the southern plains all the way up into the Great Lakes region, and that is going to be one of the ingredients for our storms. We've also got really potent upper level winds that's going to help get those storms going and maybe reach severe levels. And then you can see the highlight here outside of just rounds of rain and thunderstorms, maybe some severe storms in that oval that you're seeing there. Could have some large hail, maybe some damaging wind gusts and some flash flooding. That is a possibility when you're talking about, you can see the legend, 3 to 5 or even higher than that, where you're seeing the yellow and the oranges. That's going to add up really quickly in a short period of time. That could add to that risk of some flash flooding. So overnight tonight, that risk for severe storms, told you we're going to go back to that. So back to tonight now. Amarillo down through Lubbock, Carlsbad, Roswell. You have that risk for those storms bubbling up, maybe reaching severe limits, hail, very heavy rain, damaging wind gusts. This is what I'm concerned about. Watch what starts to happen here. We see this rain developing, and it's kind of hanging around the same areas. So a little bit of flash flooding is a risk there for portions of New Mexico over into Texas as well. And then tomorrow, that risk for severe storms from Midland up to Wichita Falls. We've got a torcon of 2 to 3 for this region. Very large hail, also damaging wind gusts. All of that is a possibility. So this is kind of chaotic weather, Chris.
Yeah.
Other places elsewhere, we have kind of more
Foot and a foot and a half. But that's generally not where people live and not on the main roads.
And as long as you're not trying to drive through some of the mountain passes, you should
be okay. And even most of the mountain passes should be all right.
Oh, okay, well. Right. There you go. Driving through mountain passes with snow, that's one thing we're looking at. And then we're also looking at the tropics because our latest tropical depression, now it is in the East Pac, TD13E. You see that here. So that area of investigation, or that invest that we saw last time, is now a tropical depression. Going to stay out over the open water. It's not anything that we are concerned with. What we are watching closely, though, are these two areas here. One near the Greater Antilles and the other in the Western Caribbean. Going to break that down for you. Let's start with the system near the Greater Antilles. It has the lowest chance of development out of the two, 10% chance. You might be like, why are we even talking about this one? Well, it is something to watch. watch, and it's an area of disturbed weather, which is going to bring rounds of heavy rain to the greater Antilles over into the southeastern portions of the Bahamas. You can kind of see that development area there. So regardless of any development, a lot of times these tropical entities that we're watching, they're basically like an moisture, and when that disturbance is near the greater Antilles or any of the Bahamas, it just enhances your rainfall chances. Now, the other area that we're watching has a high chance of development in the Western Caribbean. You can see it here. What we think is going to happen is that energy from that one area with a 10% development chance is going to kind of absorb into this area, and they are going to eventually become our next system. So we're going to watch that very closely. We've got really warm water there in the Western Caribbean. That's going to aid in the development of this low pressure system. Models starting to indicate some good circulation there. You can see it just south of Cuba. Early next week, that's what we're going to be watching. We could have a tropical depression there. Not a whole lot of wind shear to get in the way. Not a whole lot of dry air either. So you take your check boxes that you need to get a system to develop. Well, you need warm water. Check, got that. You don't want a lot of shear. That will tear it apart. Check, got that. And you want not a lot of dry air either. Well, we have a lot of moisture. So we're getting all of those boxes ticked in terms of the development of a system. The models are hinting at that as well. Here's why you want to watch this closely, though. The system's really slow to organize. That is exactly what we're seeing. There are indications that this high pressure will steer it westward, but where will it go from there? That's the question, especially when it hasn't developed yet, when it doesn't have that center of circulation. The models aren't sure what they want to do with it, but the European model is giving about what's that, 70–80% chance of development somewhere in the Western Caribbean early next week. So something to watch, Chris. If there was a 70 or 80% odds of me winning the lottery today, I'd certainly go play the lottery.
Maybe buy a couple tickets. In Phoenix, that is some serious heat.
Right. That's not just like it was slightly uncomfortable. It was everyone like, am I sure I want to live here?
Even people that have lived, summers and summers in the desert is like, this is pretty bad.
It's been warm there. And you know what? The warm streak is continuing, and it's all relative, right? I feel like that's the thing about weather. It's all subjective. To me, I look at 61 and rainy, and I'm like, oh, that's chilly. But to you,
it's like, yeah, it's almost
terrible.
shorts weather.
Right, it does sound terrible. Across Michigan, when you're talking about 66 in November for your election day forecast, that's exactly what we're looking at. Maybe in Detroit, you want to get out there early before the rain kicks in, but Traverse City down through Kalamazoo, it's going to be raining early.
And notice we've got the map, zoomed in here, with some of the battleground states, but also zoomed in because there's not a ton of weather across not a ton of bad weather. There's always weather everywhere. But there's not a ton of bad weather across the U.S. on election day.
So what we're telling you right now is if you see your state pop up, you're probably in a swing state and you're probably getting some bad weather. Rain kicking it off in Wisconsin as well. But, it's going to be one of those days where, yes, it might be raining, but it's not anything that's going to prevent you from being able to get to the polls.
Right. I mean, this is Wisconsin.
Right.
We can handle a little bit of rain.
They're like, are you kidding me? Throw me an ice storm. I could still be there.
And we'll maybe complain about it.
Right. We'll complain about it maybe just a little bit, but certainly nothing problematic there. Now, we are going to see a better chance for a little rain across Georgia, Atlanta. It's been so dry here. So probably a lot of people would actually be happy to see a little rain, even if it is on election day.
Yeah, not too warm, right? If you're standing in line, that could be, which is kind of, I think, odd for a lot of people to think. You're too warm on election day in November. But no, it can happen in the South. It certainly can happen. Get a little too warm for some. Valdosta, 85.
Right. I mean, that is really warm, especially if you're standing out in the sun. Albany, it's going to be in the mid-80s as well, so something to think about there. Maybe make sure if you are going to be standing in line, you have some water and you're ready for that warmth.
Yeah,
that's an interesting little tease there. That's this Saturday, so if you want to find out more about that, tune in there.
It's going to be a fun weekend here for sports. 7 o'clock today in the Rose City. Thorns hosting Angel City.
I mean, a bit of rain, but it is what it is. You put on your. Do they play in the rain?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then you put on your poncho.
Playing soccer.
Okay.
Football club. I mean, that's soccer. It's called. It's actually what we call soccer here in the States. And here in Orlando, the showers. Temperature is going to be in the 70s. They're hosting the Seattle Rain here in Orlando. This is tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So you know, it's the showers, I think, what can be tough. If you get the heavy rain, you know about the heavy Florida rain, right? That's going to be a little bit tough.
Now, the good news is normally it like moves on in 5 minutes, but still, you don't want to be sitting there soaking wet. I'm a big proponent of ponchos, especially for a forecast that looks like this, especially if there's any wind.
Kind of put them in your pocket, in your little bag or whatever, and you're good to go here. So turning now to the football, right, in Pennsylvania here.
I was like, is it football? Yeah, it is
now
football.
It's American football, and we're looking at some sunshine here.
That's not a bad football forecast there in University Park. And that's not the only place that we have to watch for the risk of fire. I mean, when you're talking about this kind of drought, you're just hoping for a little rain, but you're also ramping up that fire risk.
And this time of year, usually the storm track would be such that we would have some systems to come through to bring us some rain, but the red and the really, really dark red, those are the higher categories of drought. Extreme and even exceptional, which is the highest form of drought.
Yeah, that's right. So for today, we have elevated fire potential from Bridgeport down through Allentown, Philly. You guys have really not had, Philly, it's been a really long time since you guys have had rain. You're on that streak. So it's no wonder that you're seeing that elevated.
More than a month without rain.
It's been very, very dry.
And with that, fire danger, red flag warnings here from the parts of West Virginia, Maryland, all the way up through New England.
The winds are gusty, guys. The fuel is out there, so any fires that get started are going to spread really quickly.
That's great. Look at all the stuff on her there. She's got the umbrella and the poncho. That's a double dose of protection there.
Double dose of, preparation.
Preparation, just ready to go. Just stay dry no matter what.
Oh, goodness. So, a lot of us are going to either need a poncho or an umbrella in the coming days because the rain is going to be sticking around. Maybe both. I don't know. It could be a little windy.
Along with Felicia Combs, I'm Chris Warren, and we're watching the rain, the people that don't have the rain, the tropics, Felicia, still not done yet.
Hasn't this been such a crazy season? I'm like, hey, tropical area that we've been watching. You were supposed to be like, what, 2 months? 2 months ago.
Yeah, no, I kept kicking it down the road, right?
Yeah, so now we're still talking about it. We're going to break all of that down for you. So let's, on upper level winds, they are just adding a punch to this weather system, and that is going to help to maybe help those storm systems reach severe levels, maybe add a little more of a damaging wind threat, all of that coming together. So oval, severe storms possible over the next couple days, Monday through Tuesday. So that's something that will be kind of refined as we head closer to those dates, but just know could have some of those storms getting a little feisty, and a bit of flash flooding issues are possible when you're talking about maybe 3 to 5 inches of rain. So that's what we're looking at in this yellow and this orange. So OKC up into portions of the Ozarks, northwestern Arkansas. You want to keep a close eye on that risk for flooding that's going to come with these rounds of rain. So timing that out for you into your Saturday morning, you've got showers from Lubbock up through Kansas City throughout the day on Saturday. That's hanging around the plains, filling in across the upper Mississippi River Valley, heading through Sunday into your afternoon, moving into the Great Lakes region, but all the way still down into Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri. It's going to be a very wet time for you. Iowa, same thing. Sticking around. Now, I want to touch on this really quickly. We also have that risk for some severe thunderstorms tonight for places like Roswell, Lubbock, Amarillo, and we have that risk of some flash flooding. These showers and storms are going to bubble up in some heavy rain at times. So I would keep a close eye on that from Roswell up through Amarillo. You know, I know that's the last thing we want to hear. There are still, Chris, people in Roswell and around there whose homes were just completely damaged by the October 19th, 20th rain. And so I'm still trying to figure out what they're going to do with that. So the last thing you want to hear is that risk for flooding again.
Always going to be on edge.
Right, exactly, especially overnight, like tonight.
Yeah, and that's one of the scarier times for, flooding's never good, but it's just that much more dangerous when it's hard to make sense of your surroundings.
Right.
Maybe a little blurry-eyed from a bad night's sleep, waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning, and then that.
Not what you want to deal with.
Not at all.
Well, with the end of Halloween, we know we're heading into November, the end of the parameters that we've put on hurricane season at the end of the month. But man, it's been active so far.
It has. So far, named storms, 15. 10 of those were hurricanes and 4 major hurricanes.
Those are some crazy numbers when you think about it, especially when you think about how many actually made landfall. Now, there for a second, you know, the forecast was for, oh, this is going to be a crazy hurricane season. And then when we were hitting kind of what should be the peak and it was below average, people were like, what's going on? But man, have we made that up.
Jump. So this is essentially like the energy. You can think of it that way. It's the, the overall energy. I mean, a lot of, really complicated math that goes into this. But bottom line is, the more the busier generally, or the bigger storms. You can have a few that are really big, they can produce a lot of energy. But this, boom, that uptick there, end of September into October.
Man, it really just jumped up there really quickly. You can see, when you put it on a map like this, and you see how many threats we've watched in the Gulf of Mexico, how many times we've had to hold our breath about where these storms were going, and then you see names like Milton and Helene. It just really underscores how much we've been through this season.
And so many landfalls as well here. And you can see Francine going across the Yucatan and then hitting into Texas.
Such a busy season in terms of those. I mean, just look at this. This is when we're talking about living in the Gulf and having storm fatigue. This is exactly what we're talking about. Started with Beryl with that landfall all the way through Helene, Debbie, Milton.
Category 3 Milton making landfall there, and Helene Category 4.
That is just, having multiple storms make landfall in your state or near you is bad enough, but make them major hurricanes, and that just ups that level. That's even worse.
And we've seen all of the destruction and all of the damage here. Where there are actual measuring sites for storm surge, there were some new records, as you can see here, and considerably higher, right? Coupled to a few feet from the previous record.
Not by just a little. And then when you think about getting that flooding from Helene, when Helene was so far away, and then Milton right after that for much of the west coast of Florida, just such an exhausting time the past, 2 months have been.
And then in October, first time on record with 3 simultaneous hurricanes in the month of October. And you see right there, we had Milton at the time, and then Kirk and Leslie.
Man, it is that is really ramping up that accumulated cyclone energy that we showed you at the beginning of this. Having 3 at one time will spike that number very quickly.
So as we're seeing here, October absolutely you can have for hurricanes, and we saw a lot. And November, we also can, in the past, see a lot of activity. Here's Jen Carfagna with that story.